Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for taking this afternoon. For those of you who are in East Africa, for joining us, and for everyone else, good morning to you. Today, we'll be having our panelists share with us what it has taken to build partnerships to support an integrated approach. And this is part of the Utilities 2.0 project. Again, the Utilities 2.0 project has been in progress, or rather we've been operating the site for the last 10 months. We've also been hosting a series of webinars. So this is the first for this year, but we'll definitely be sharing a better overview of what the team has done, what it has taken to achieve the success that we've enjoyed today, and then what are we working towards, and then finally we'll be having our panelists share some insights with the specific topic that we are going to be discussing today, which is building partnerships to support an integrated approach. So again, welcome everyone. I'd like us to just watch a short little video to help us to just appreciate what has been executed on ground and to just give us a better insight of how the pilot looks like on the ground.
In Uganda, a country of over 40 million people, only 41% of its population has access to electricity. The government of Uganda aims to achieve universal energy access by 2030. But currently, only a fourth of the population is connected to the power grid. This means that Uganda will likely have to connect over 10 million customers to achieve universal access. If grid extension is the sole method of service provision, the required investment would likely be in the range of $7 billion, which is about 20% of the nation's GDP. There is a cheaper and faster way. A coalition of energy sector leaders are creating the utilities of the future by integrating the public and private sectors and centralized and decentralized solutions to provide affordable, reliable, and clean power for all.
Utilities 2.0 is actually a global initiative that's focused on bringing centralized and decentralized energy together to catalyze the research, engineering, regulation, and political will to achieve a faster, more affordable approach to ending energy poverty.
We have the SDG 7, right, which envisaged by 2030, across the world, everyone or every household should have access to clean energy. So we believe that through this project, the learnings we shall get, we will be able to scale and assist to ensure that we can achieve SDG 7.
Working in partnership with the national utility is a must if we want to bring electricity to 100% of the population.
Through the Twake pilot project, the partners aim to achieve faster connections and drive demand stimulation so that more customers productively use their electricity.
Our goal is to link energy access and agro-processing, promote economic growth in rural communities.
Ekosa amasanyalaze speed mba ngirakosa obudde butono obenga ofuna obuwungabo ebyali byetolodde kiwumu bagina kubanga baleeta mu kifo kye kubanga bafuna emmere nnyingi bawone engendo empanvu zibadde batambula mu bifo ebyewa.
This project has helped business owners earn more from their investments. Juliet Nabatanzi, one of the many project beneficiaries, is now earning more from her house rentals.
Jenadaddemu amasanyalaze bagirwanira omutali era omupangisa yagenze nti saagala etaliimu era kimpaliriza okukomawo nagina egitaafuna gifune.
It has been a journey from customers having a lot of questions and doubts about the power to customers now embracing and more connections coming up and having so many other people wanting to get the opportunity to be connected.
One of the project partners, Enagro, is providing appliance financing for fridges, saloons, and restaurant equipment to enable businesses to make more money from their electricity connections.
Fridge enyambe mu business yange olw'okuba abakasitoma bajja ne mbawa ebinyogoga ne bafuna kale kye baagala.
Appliances and tools that use electricity that can help people earn money can help the energy company earn an income as well. So when the customer is earning more money, the energy company is earning more money, and Energo is making a business gain as well.
The initiative, once scaled, can make a serious contribution to achieving universal energy access.
The objectives of the project is to test grid integration, and as such, the customer that we've connected is able to vent off the Umeme system like any other customers. He's been provided with the same meters the Umeme customer has.
The learnings from this project will inform significantly policy, especially for Uganda, where mini-grids and integration of mini-grids or offline systems to the grid is still in its infancy stages.
It's time to realize that neither centralized nor decentralized energy is purpose-built to solve energy poverty alone. It's only through partnership that we'll be able to solve this global problem.
Excellent. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Sumaya Mohammed, and I'm the Power for All Uganda Country Director, as well as the campaign lead. I'm going to be giving us a short overview just to further help contextualize what the project has achieved and share some of the findings so that we can appreciate the conversation that we're going to be having with the partners. As the short video indicated, the Sustainable Development Goal 7 for affordable and clean energy is one of the most reachable targets. However, the pace of ensuring that everyone has affordable and clean access to energy is still lagging behind. We have over 700 million people that still doesn't have access to affordable and clean energy. The central grid has been the connection of choice for development dollars. And while global investment in the power sector has increased by over 2.5 times over in the 15 years or so, we still need to accelerate the pace, and that would require us to be connecting roughly 100 million people per year in order for us to achieve this target by 2030. We also know that COVID-19 hasn't supported the pace or the current status. It has actually worsened. However, through this integrated approach, we aim to prove that we can achieve this goal through collaboration and achieving faster connections, driving demand and improving the overall energy system performance. So that is the goals of the project. The research focus is testing this integrated planning approach. So how do the different partners have to work with one another, and what is required in order to come together and plan, design, and execute this in collaboration? What is the impact of demand stimulation? And finally, can we develop profitable business models? Limits within the least energy access countries, and again, utilities are going to play a central role in ensuring that countries and governments reach the energy access targets. However, the annual per capita consumption remains low, whereas in developing countries, it is at 400 kilowatt hours versus 8,000 kilowatt hours in OECD countries. The cost of connection using grid extension can cost up to $2,000 or more. The new energy customers don't know how to use power, and that further limits the ability to extend access. 85% of the energy in impoverished live in the rural areas as well. So if we are going to want to achieve that sustainable development goals, the utility has to be empowered and be allowed to use other technologies or collaborate with others in order to participate and support in the energy access agenda. Grid extension works when there is a dense population and you have short distances to connect. Once you start using grid extension, which is poles and wires, and you take that to a low density area that has very long distance to cover, the economics just starts to break. So what is the opportunity when we look at the strengths? When a utility partners with a decentralized renewable energy company, the idea is how can we leverage their strengths? We know that the utility strengths are they've already experienced in managing scale. They can have access to low cost of capital. They are used to engaging with the government on a number of matters because they are a tightly regulated entity. However, they do have some development areas or weaknesses, such as they are slow with execution. They do not engage with their customers adequately enough, and they are slow to adopt new technologies. If we look at the decentralized renewable energy companies, they are agile, they are customer-centric, and they are innovative, and they are also quick to react or make decisions. However, development areas or weaknesses for the decentralized renewable energy companies is that they don't have experience in scale. They are still subjected to accessing high cost of capital and subjected to high risk because of limited regulation to support the technologies and limited interaction with the government. But when these two come together and they leverage their strength, we can unlock the potential to accelerate access, increase demand, and ensure that we achieve clean and affordable energy access. And that is what we have done within the Utilities 2.0 project. Now, looking at the Ugandan context, right now the pace of electrification in Uganda is still not fast enough. Right now, roughly 50% of people in Uganda has access to some form of energy. 28% of the people are connected to the grid. If we look at consumption remains very low. On a per capita basis, roughly 100 kilowatt hours per capita per annum is within Uganda. The government has identified the necessary goals in order for the country to set targets and goals to achieve this. They have set a target of 80% by 2040 under the National Development Plan. The government recognized the need for increasing productive use. They have identified the need to support mini grids, and there is a call upon all actors in the sector to aim for 300,000 new connections each year. There's going to be continuous pressure on the utility to improve its reliability, improve connection targets, aiming to reduce the tariff, and be frugal in both CapEx and OpEx management. So the pressure on the utilities business is threatened from a sustainability perspective. Uganda in 2010, with the utility, achieved 400,000 connections. They have been able to triple that within the last decade, whereas there's roughly 1.5 million people that has been connected to date. The government at the same time has also significantly invested in the supply capacity, where the supply has been increased from 500 megawatt to 1,200 megawatt. Peak demand is roughly at 600 megawatt. But again, if the country wants to achieve 80% access by 2040, the utility will need to increase the pace of connections and demand in order to meet the targets and prevent losses from the investment in the supply. Again, grid extension alone cannot achieve the access targets. There is low demand for grid edge customers. These customers consume very little power, roughly between 17 kilowatt hours per month, and that increases the cost to serve to the utility. The future customer is rural and low usage customers with little to no productive use under the current policies. What role is it to do productive use? And that is something that our partners on call will talk to. Again, as indicated, if the country remains on this trajectory of business as usual, it will be costly to the country to achieve 100% electrification by 2030, which will cost the country $5 to $7 billion US. This makes the current methods, especially grid extension, too costly, and therefore the utility has to be empowered to consider other technologies and ways to support the agenda. The Utilities 2.0 project, therefore, our vision has been, it is designed to combine centralized and decentralized technology into an integrated, intelligent, and interactive energy network that can deliver customer-centric, clean energy solutions to end energy poverty at the lowest cost and in the fastest time. So what have we done within the pilot site itself? Tuwake is the Luganda, which is a local Ugandan word for let's light up. But for us, we extend that same meaning that you can achieve more with just then lighting your system. If we look at the pilot site within Uganda, it's 30 kilometers from Kampala. For those of you who have been to Kampala, and if you don't know where Kampala is, please look it up. The large yellow shaded area indicates the community, and to the bottom there's a yellow pin, and that is where the solar mini grid system has been deployed. If we look at the demographics of the site, there is roughly 380 connections, and those connections can be split into households, which make up 56%, businesses roughly 14%, and then there's a significant amount of households that participate in the agricultural sector. The proposed interventions deployed has been a 40 kilowatt mini grid to provide power to the community. Appliance financing to businesses has been deployed by Integro, and we also have drying and milling containerized service called the Empower Pods that has also empowered and stimulated the agricultural value chain within the community. We have further provided 25 streetlights in the trading center to empower and increase security to support social activities within the community in the evening. To further illustrate what we have done, the site did not have access to power, and we brought a mini grid to energize the community. Once the community's full or maximum number of connections were achieved, and we then allowed our productive use partners to come and really support those businesses to drive better services within the community through asset financing. The Empower Pods, through their milling and drying services, came into operation, and working together, these decentralized renewable energy companies is focused on this customer-centric approach and building the customer and supporting the customer in using power productively. We are working towards testing interconnection, and what that means is once consumption exceeds the generation capacity of the mini grid, we plan to interconnect, because again, the idea is we want to support the utility in receiving a customer that is ready to use grid power. And through this collaboration, we show how this customer-centric with demand stimulation supports this approach. This is a research project, and we have been able to analyze the data over the last 10 months in the pilot. What we find is that the pace of access is accelerated by 5 years. This approach shows the benefits of working together. Demand is significantly accelerated, 3,000% greater, and that is what the data shows. And then finally, from an economics perspective, it proves that this approach is least cost and that the customer lifetime value is 4 times higher than business as usual. Think of customer lifetime value being a financial metric that helps us to understand productive use or demand stimulation just a little bit better. This is the data set that we've analyzed, and this is just to prove to you that this faster access and evaluating the number of connections, if we look at this graph, the purple and blue bars are for the grid connected sites, so that is business as usual. And the sites were first connected in 2012. You can see that the connections achieved by the grid is as low as 1 and 3 connections in comparison to the decentralized renewable energy site, illustrated in green, illustrating 350 connections achieved to date. Again, faster access is achieved. Similarly with demand, we analyze demand against the control site, which is illustrated in purple, and a grid connected site in blue. And if you again focus on 2012 for these sites, demand remains very, very low as 100 kilowatt hours for the entire site. That cannot support, the economics if you use grid extension. Here you can see the 3,000% by the green bar because consumption is significantly higher because of the maximum connections that has been achieved. To give us some context, it has taken a significant amount of partnership to get us to the point where we are within the project. The project is operationalized and the site is continuing to service and connect customers. Our productive use partners are providing productive use services to businesses and the community. And Power for All's research team is collecting the data for monitoring and evaluation purposes, while the team is focusing towards grid extension, which will be the last component of the pilot. I'll be turning over to our implementing partners to really help us to understand, with all of this wonderful successes that we've achieved, what does it mean from a partnerships perspective? I'll now be turning over to our panelists that I'll be introducing one by one, and I'll be starting off with Charlene Nagawa, who is a design engineer. She's also the technical and utilities 2.0 lead for Equatorial Power. Charlene, you are most welcome. I think it would be wonderful to share with our colleagues what it has meant with the number of partnerships that you have had to develop. And I think maybe choose one partnership and explain why that partnership was valuable and how are you seeing the customers benefiting from this partnership, please.
Thank you for that, Sumaya. Good afternoon, everyone. Once again, my name is Charlene Nagawa. I am a design engineer at Equatorial Power and currently the technical lead for Utility 2.0. Equatorial Power is a mini grid developer on this project. We have implemented the 40 kilowatt peak plant and currently operating it. So we're responsible for all customer operations, whether commercial or technical on site. So as Sumaya had mentioned, this has been quite a successful project where we are at with the monitoring and evaluation. And for us as mini-grid developers, we have a vision to enhance clean energy access. But in addition to this, we want to promote the productive use of energy and to grow the rural and peri-urban communities in the sub-Saharan Africa. So this partnership has been beneficial, if I can just pick up one partnership. So we do want to see communities grow as developers, and there are large capital costs involved in this. And because we don't have the financial capacity to do this, it has been great partnering with companies like Energrow to enhance business incubation activities, that is appliance financing. So through this appliance financing, we have realized increase in average revenue per customer for those who have been able to get the appliances. We have also realized growth and also change in behavior and how they perceive electricity. So for a customer, it's not just about energy access. It has been about transiting to this energy and effectively utilizing it. And also regarding the growth in the customers and the community, I will also point out East African Power, which is currently implementing the milling pod, which is the productive use of energy in the community. So for us, that's a large power uptake. Like any mini grid developer, we need a large power uptake. Even the utility, they do have the industries. So we need a large power uptake, which brings in higher revenues and generally promotes growth. So we have seen services extended because of this project, because of this integrated project access. And then just in addition, we usually during the project development phase, we have delays in penetrating the different stakeholders, right, from government to the customers. However, because we've been working with Umeme, which has a public profile and a recognizability in Uganda, this has reduced our delays, getting licenses and getting signatures to implement the project, and it quickened the process, and we're able to extend electricity to the community. So for me, this has been extremely valuable for us as a company.
Thank you so much, Charlene. We'll come back because there's been some interesting nuggets that you've already shared. But let me allow our next panelist to answer the same question. And he is Peter Mwesiga. He's a project manager focusing on strategic projects for Umeme Limited. Peter, similarly, can you tell us by choosing, one example of a partnership that really led to the benefits of that partnership being illustrated? And then how has the utility seen the community benefiting from this partnership?
Thank you, Sumaya. Peter Mwesiga, working with them as a project manager, responsible for strategic projects. As Sumaya and Jane have already stated, this has been a great and still remains a great project from running to implementation. The project has already allowed Umeme to make forays into the other side of the distribution infrastructure, where initially Umeme has been concentrating on centralized systems. But now this partnership, we've been able to see and co-implement on a decentralized system. The project has is also already allowing us to have a test, as will happen in the next phase, on what is going to happen when the grid arrives in areas where currently you have projects, and several of these projects are being created or implemented in different parts of the country. Critical as well has been the ability to work with Equatorial Power to provide back-end support to this project. This is critical in testing how the utility can support the off-grid sector in access projects in as far as the back-end support is concerned. It is also critical for the later stages of the project for integration, since the customer has a seamless experience. The customer would have used the same meter, the same token, and later on, once integration happens, this becomes seamless. The different agreements, operation agreements, implementation agreements that have been created on this project has already created a platform on what needs to happen for something like this to be replicated. I don't want to forget the beautiful experience that we're having with Enagro, our appliance financing partner, where we have appliances that have been deployed even on the grid. This is already showing what can happen when we're beyond just providing access to creating the necessary partnerships so that people can enjoy the benefits of access beyond just providing a meter and providing the right bulb. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. Peter, before we move on to the next partner, do you maybe just want to expand on when you say a back-end system support, just to help our attendees and our participants to fully appreciate what does that mean? Is it only UMEME doing the monthly reconciliation of accounts? Like, I think maybe just help us to better understand that back-end support and that partnership that you've had to have with Equatorial Power.
Thank you, Sumaya. That's one of the unique concepts on this project. So basically what this means is that the customers are able to vend on the UMEME system. The Twake customer is able to vend on the UMEME system. They receive the same token, a credit token, like the UMEME customer receives, and they are managed on the same platform. Just to put that into perspective, UMEME's capacity system-wise should be able to support over 10 million customers. Now, the project customers are very few, and as such, rather than invest in a different system by the project, we're able to use the existing UMEME system to support this project. Now, the beauty of this is that you can then support more projects on the existing capacity on the utility end, rather than having these different projects set up the same. And we already have a few requests from other developers who would need something like this to be provided to them. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So we're going to come back to that point, Peter, because I think you're now starting to speak about, the opportunities and how this is starting to extend, beyond the project as learnings. Let us continue with our panelists sharing their insights. And our next panelist, can we kindly mute ourselves if you are not the panelist? I'm going to call on Justin from East African Power. Justin, please introduce yourself. I think you need to help us understand what is Empower Pods a little bit better, and then similarly, like Peter and Charlie, identify one partnership and help us to understand what is the value of that partnership and how are the customers that are using the Empower Pods at the site benefiting through this collaboration.
Thank you, Sumaya, and hi everyone. My name is Justin Hernan Radulfe. I'm a business development, project development manager in charge of solar at East African Power. Just in a few words before I start, East African Power is an integrated renewable energy company, meaning we're involved in the entire value chain of renewable energy projects, from financing, developing, building, and operating hydropower plants and solar power plants all around Africa. We are active in the utility scale, commercial, industrial, and mini-grid markets, and our headquarters is in Kigali. So in addition to generation, we are also involved in demand stimulation for productive use of energy in mini-grid projects, which was our main role in the Utility 2.0 project. EEP's target was to link energy access and agro-processing to promote economic growth in the community. We have provided what we call Empower Pods, consisting of 2 containerized agro-processing facility powered by solar, being a milling pod and drying pod to process maize for farmers in the community. So we see 2 meaningful partnerships throughout the project. First of all, we managed to partner with Equatorial Power by being an anchor client of the mini grid, where we consume a large part of the solar production. It wouldn't have been possible to power our Empower pods without access to the mini grids and without access to the land where we install the pods. We also managed to partner with a local member of the community, which was very important to us, to get access to his network of farmers and allow him to boost his revenue by giving farmers access to our pods so that they can process maize in a more efficient way. Finally, obviously the partnership with Power for All will manage to connect all the different stakeholders of the mini-grid value chain according to each company's expertise, which allowed each one of us to focus on a specific area and for EAP to explore more the possibility on demand stimulation. So with regards to how our customer benefited from the partnership, the project allowed our partner to get access to cleaner and more efficient agro-processing machines, energy-wise, by using solar as opposed to diesel. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Justin. Again, some great insights coming from you, emphasizing that it's not just about entering a community and bringing new technology. It is really also bringing along those businesses who have previously relied on, let's say, dirty diesel generators, because we also, when we designed the project, right, and it's just to help, our participants today to get a better insight. We don't want to displace businesses. It's how do you empower the local businesses and to really, help them to benefit from, having access to new and better equipment. Because when we spoke to the local miller as a team, he emphasized that he was struggling because of the diesel generator that he was using. The customers, didn't like the fumes within the product itself. But now customers, they're coming to the Empower pods, they're actively using it, and they absolutely love it because it is being powered sustainably. It doesn't have that negative perception that is associated with, diesel-powered maize milling machines. So thank you for sharing, and emphasizing that partnership that East African Power has developed with the local miller within the community. Let's call on our next panelist, which is Energrow. Edwin, you are most welcome. Edwin is the Managing Director at Energrow. Please tell us a little bit more about Energrow, and as the previous panelists, please identify one or two partnerships and tell us what is the value addition that you've experienced as Energrow through this collaboration. And then again, can you also share how the community has benefited through this partnership and the services that Energrow has executed in collaboration with our partners on core?
Thank you, Sumaya. Energrow is an asset finance business. We're a unique business in that we focus on empowering small and medium business enterprises and also households with ways of being able to grow their incomes by providing them with a productive use asset, which is an electrical appliance. But we also are deep energy partners. We partner with the national utility, UMEME, as well as off-grid partners such as Equatorial Power, in order for us to deliver these productive use of electrical appliances in areas that are covered by the grid. Our business model is quite unique in that we are, on one hand, we are a microfinance company. We do management of asset financing. We do management of customer payments and collections. But our real key focus is on customer engagement and financial literacy. We've seen that financial literacy is really the biggest gap. It's really the big challenge that our customers are facing. A lot of them have needs to grow their incomes, but how do they grow their incomes? It's not a case of us providing them with any asset because they maybe want the asset, but we need to intentionally provide them with an asset that they really need, and that's based on the needs of their business. So at Enagro, we go through quite an intentional process of understanding our customer, looking at their level of income, looking at their understanding of their business, and then we go further and suggest an appliance that we feel would help them grow their business and become more independent, more sustainable. So that is how our business operates. We focus heavily on customer engagement as a way of ensuring that our customers are correctly using the asset and they really understand the asset, but also that they're able to manage their repayments. Customer repayments are a big challenge. Our customers are at the lower end of the pyramid, so they wouldn't ordinarily be able to walk into a bank and get a loan to buy an asset. So they have limited ability to actually access credit, and we provide that avenue for them to access credit. But we also need to be very responsible as a company in that as much as we afford them credit, we need to ensure that they are able to actually fulfill the needs of servicing a loan, and that they're actually able to grow and purchase more assets and actually provide value to their energy partners. So that's how our business operates. We've had a lot of learnings in Chumo in the area of operation. We have consistently been able to learn about our customers. We did a lot of surveys and a lot of research before giving them appliances, but by the customers having our appliances and using them and that customer engagement, we've learned a tremendous amount about how we can improve on our customer service, how we can improve on our training and financial literacy, and also how we can work closely with partners. I think the partnership has been extremely valuable in that there's been a lot of impact on behalf of the customer. The customer has actually benefited by actually being able to have an asset that's enabled them to grow their business. So from that perspective, the objectives of the partnership have been met. But also with regards to the partnership, there's been a very close collaboration. If I may give an example of Equatorial Power, they are a mini grid partner in the area, and we have constantly been learning from them and they from us. There's a kind of free flow of communication with regards to how can we improve some of the customer service, or how can we address some of the issues that the customers are facing with regards to their availability of power. And vice versa, there's also a lot of feedback with regards to how we can improve on our engagement with regards to appliances. So there's that free flow of communication. It has not been smooth, but there's been constant improvement and constant flow of communication, which is really, really exciting, and it bodes very well for the coming months. I think what has really helped us is our partnership with Umeme as a national utility. The brand name that Umeme has given us a foothold and credibility. Enagro is a startup business. We have very ambitious plans for scaling, but sometimes you need a foundation. You need to have a brand visibility that can actually help open doors. And Umeme has provided that, as well as communication support with regards to having some of our messages flighted on media. And this has been very, very helpful for us. So the partnerships have been very valuable in that sense. And to a large extent, we have met a lot of the objectives with regards to providing customers with access to electricity and electrical appliances, but also seeing their incomes increase. And some of the data that we have gathered has shown that there's been an increase in customer incomes, as well as the average revenue that they're submitting to the energy partner.
Thank you so much for that, Edwin. And at this stage, I think I need to dig a little bit deeper, because it sounds that things were all moonshine and roses, while we also know that it has been, it's been a learning curve for all of us on call. Peter and Charlene, I would like the two of you to please, I would like all of my panelists to please, switch on their videos, because we are just going to have a conversation. And I'm going to start with Charlene and Peter. And Charlene, I want you to start off, because the designing and working with the utility was absolutely critical for this project. As I've indicated in the beginning of this call, we are working towards grid interconnection, and the whole idea of working with the utility was to ensure that we meet grid standards. And as Peter indicated, that support from Umeme in the back-end services was also with the intention that when we reach interconnection, we don't have to swap out meters because they are not compatible with the UMEME system. And at the same time, it shouldn't frustrate the customer. The customer should not even know that interconnection has happened at that point in time. And that is why we had to look into, the meter. However, we know that it was a lot of conversations about metering because the mini grids uses a smart meter. The utility is still learning about smart meters. So I want you to talk about, the engineering philosophy that a mini grid entity, is focused on, because you work with these, rural communities who don't have, access to power. But when you had to design the network and interacting with the UMEME engineers, you also recognize that they are coming more from a, servicing a much larger community base and operating that community for a significantly much longer period of time. And we learned that, right, through dialogue, through the working groups and the sessions. So we'll start off by you just talking about that experience and sharing some of the lessons learned, and then you will switch over to Peter, because Peter, you were with us in all of those calls, and you can speak to the journey and the difference in design philosophy and what the UMEME engineers has learned along this journey.
Okay, thank you for that, Sumaya. I'll start off with a collaboration with UMEME. So knowing that UMEME is a large company, it's a large utility in Uganda, and we are a smaller mini grid. And so normally what would take 3 days to make a decision in our company because of the size of the company would probably normally take 14 days for the utility. However, because of the partnership and the coordination with the different partners, at least we came to an understanding of, it then came to an understanding of like 7 days, yeah? So the partnership did support that. It did reduce the times that decisions had to be made, especially with a joint implementation program to extend through the vending system of UMEME. The second thing that could have brought in a bit of confusion was communication channels with customers. So the public profile of UMEME is large to the whole country. So the customers knew UMEME. So sometimes we'd lose information along the way when they communicated to UMEME instead. However, we bridged that with bring our communication as all partners. Yeah, we brought communication. We did create a communication platform where customers were heard and we avoided information being lost. Yeah. So for us, those are probably two of the challenges that we could have faced working with a large utility like UMEME. Otherwise, it has been fully beneficial, yeah, in regards to customer growth. When we talk about the distribution network, you mentioned something about smart metering. So mini grid developers, we usually implement smart metering, which is something that's lacking in the national electrification plan entirely. But the advantages of smart metering are we can be able to monitor the customer behaviors, right? From understanding how institutions consume, businesses and households. So for us, this helps us develop a more sustainable design for the community, something that will meet the community's needs as we continue to collect this data. And smart metering also supports us in locating power losses, yeah? Power losses through electrical technical difficulties or power losses through power theft, yeah? So smart metering supports in this. And another thing that we have benefited from smart metering as mini grid developers is it creates transparency for the customers. So if customers can understand their consumption habits, it's easier for companies that are maybe implementing appliance financing to sell their products, because now a customer knows I actually need to use electricity efficiently, so it is beneficial for my development. So that's basically an overview of how it has been working with the utility. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlene. So Peter, over to you.
Thank you, Sumaya and Charlene, on that overview. Quite an interesting journey it has been. I think what we found on this program, flexible, interesting and honest partners, where we've learned all of us along the way. Some of the challenges Charin has mentioned, we had to overcome, and we also had to learn of the different operating environments of the different players. For example, the need for more caution on the utilities end comes from the level of regulation that the utility finds themselves in, which might be different from what the mini-grid player finds. Also, the scale. I think Charin has talked about the scale. While a mini-grid developer will be developing a distribution network for that site, the utility will be putting into consideration that local voltage network being part of the network backbone that feeds into feeders, and outages, for example, from one end could end up affecting customers very far away from there. So this has been a great collaboration where different partners have come to run. You can imagine chatting when we started the discussion around metering. Equatorial Power has implemented several projects with a spark meter, which they are very comfortable with. And here we are telling them, look, why don't we look at a different meter, a Higgs meter that Omeme uses, which might be of different properties. But at the end of the day, the partners agreed that in order to streamline integration at the end of the day, the network as well as the meter had to talk to what is on the grid, because if that did not happen, then at integration, you would be considering retrofitting these systems, which could make the whole project expensive. I think what we've learned, one of the things we've learned on this project is that with patience, with collaboration, with trusting relationships, most of the barriers that the two systems face can be overcome. And when that happens, then beautiful things come out. I've just given the example where you now have different players, developers, private investors who are asking the same whether what has been provided to this project, the backend support system, the support on bidding, where that can be provided, because when that happens, then their focus goes to looking for financing and more away from systems that already exist on the utility. Thank you.
Peter, I'm going to just ask you to expand on one more, because I do think that we have, enough time, and the whole aim is to really help people to understand that building these partnerships, it took, a lot of engagement. You mentioned, trust a number of times, but trust is built over time, right? And I think, we need to emphasize that this project has been in the making since 2019, and we took almost a year in planning and designing and getting, integrated plans so that we can identify what is that partnership between the utility and the mini grid, and then taking it further and then designing, joint operating plans. So I think let's talk about, the process, because we're using these broad words, but for someone who wants to replicate this, what is their journey and what is some of the documents that is going to help, right? Because we need to help the participants joining us today to take away some tangible, nuggets that they can say, okay, hang on, I can benefit through a partnership, but these are the things that I need to put in place to help me, to develop and really, anchor that partnership. So that is one part that I would like you to also talk about, because again, that integrated plan that we done, it took a significant amount of time, but then once we had that, there were key other documents that help to anchor the relationship, and it also helped to keep one another accountable, and we need to talk about the accountability aspect as well. Secondly, I also want you to speak about the learning, because again, we spoke about smart metering, that the utilities are still, the utilities are not using it at mass scale, or in the way in which the mini grids are utilizing it within their business model. But again, how have you learned from the customer-centric approach that the mini grids do employ? you saw how quickly we got over 85% of connections before the plant even went live. And that was sheer through how the customer got engaged. And we know that connections, once poles and wires are given to a community, the utility doesn't go knocking on doors and helping customers, fully understand how they can overcome, challenges to wiring and how they can get a connection. The customer either has to physically come to your office, or they need to have access to internet and go onto your website and then read through the process. And maybe if they are smart enough, they'll call a customer agent to, get that support. But I think that there's been key learnings from interaction with the customer that the decentralized renewable energy companies does that the utility has, acknowledged. So two things you're going to talk about, documents and processes that help to anchor this partnership, and then, the journey that the customer has had, through this collaboration using a customer-centric approach.
Thank you, Smile, for trying to put me on the spot. However, coming back to the 2 points you've mentioned, I would imagine when you meet somebody in the DRE sector and you tell them that you want to collaborate with the utility, they would be asking questions. You did more with solar. What are you doing with a prayer from the hydro end? So you would also imagine that those would be some of the questions that run through somebody from the utility end once you start talking of collaborations with players from the solar end. So those were interesting conversations at the beginning. Without forgetting the discussions we had with Enagro, for example, we've talked about the level of regulation the utility finds themselves in, and it's crucial and critical that the utility is regulated, because that's the backbone of the national electricity infrastructure. So regulation has to be adequate to support the needs of the customer as well as the developers themselves. Now, for example, in the discussions with Enagro, some of the first questions I remember asking the team were, what happens when an asset blows up? Because if that asset blows up, then you have safety concerns to report on. What happens if the quality is not proper? What happens if the customer does not pay? Do you want us to disconnect them? Because you might not be able to disconnect them for an appliance if they paid for their credit. So those were interesting questions we had to overcome. The same goes for the discussions we had with Equatorial Power on the meter itself, on the network, on the activities that will happen after implementation, and on the meter itself, especially the meter. What is important to note, for example, is that the utility is working with history. So you have a history of meters from the beginning. And the other part is that the investments that happen into the network from the utility end are being implemented on an existing system. So the two have to communicate, which might be different for a DRE project where everything is new and innovation becomes quicker. The other part is the affordability. What happens? The utility understands the need for a smart meter, but before that happens, you have to balance the innovation against affordability for everyone. Because if then the system becomes too expensive and it enters into the tariff, then people will have power, but they won't be able to afford. So those are the questions that have to be balanced along the way. However, the framework agreements that have been created, we've had non-disclosure agreements signed between women and the different players. For example, there is a duty of confidentiality, of data confidentiality to the customer. Now, when you have a partnership with Enagro, you then have to answer the question, how do I give you consumption data for customers who are contracted 5 years down the road, yet they are not party to this agreement? So we had agreements that had to be signed with Enagro. We also had requirements, for example, for Enagro to close and seek approval from the customers to allow us share that data. We've had agreements, joint implementation agreements with Equatorial Power to build the LV network. So we've had several contracts that had to come in place. Coming to running, there are great lessons that have been picked up. For example, on front-loading connections, I think Sma has just talked about the 85% connectivity that was reached even before the plant went live. For example, one of the great lessons that have been picked is that, for example, by having the last mile connection as part of the access project design, front loads the connection, rather than a scenario where you have the network being built and then customers trickling in one by one until they are connected and until they get access. By having that as part of the project design, including meters, including the connection materials, improves the activity. The other lesson is the engagement. I think Charin talked about it. But by getting closer to the customer in the process and providing them with all the relevant information, reduces the information gap that exists in their connection policy. And I think therein also lies another opportunity for collaboration between the utility and the off-grid players, whether on projects like this or on lines that are already in existence. In there lies an opportunity as well. So there are different opportunities for collaboration that can spin off this arrangement in addition to what you're already picking from this project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Peter. So again, I want to just, reiterate the utility. Peter, please keep your camera on. We are having a dialogue, and it's nice to, interact with you. I know that this is virtually. I just want to emphasize, right? So again, it has been a journey. There has been documentation to support those partnerships, right? It has been supplemented, as Peter said. There are some sensitive data that has been shared, but that is the opportunity, because for Enagro, that data of consumption before has been integral. So Edwin, maybe just, explain how accessing that data, has helped you to refine your model and really be able to, give a solution that is the asset financing to the customer, and how that data really helps you to, support in giving that customer access. That is one. And then I also want you to maybe speak about, what are the key aspects that is going to lead to a long-lasting relationship, right? Because if anyone else wants to replicate this, what are some of the key things that they need to, take away in wanting to build long-lasting relationships? So talk about, having access to that data, that partnership, and what your experience has been working with the utility, and then share with us, some key takeaways that the participants can further, appreciate and consider adopting.
Yeah, thank you, Sumaya. Consumption data is critical for us. We're a data-driven business. Data enables us to understand our customers, know which customers to target, and also understand the needs of the customers. So data is really a key core part of our business, and consumption data is critical for us. Of course, there were a few challenges with regards to obtaining this data from Umeme. As earlier mentioned, Umeme is a huge utility. There's a lot that's going on, and we are a small startup, we're very agile. So a lot of engagements and relationship building went into us being able to, first of all, obtain the data and give Umeme a level of confidence that they can share the data with us in confidence, and also reducing the timelines for us, receiving the data from Umeme. So as the trust was built and relationships were strengthened between Enagro and Umeme, the timelines have also reduced in terms of receiving consumption data. Consumption data has enabled us to understand, the consumption patterns of our customers. It has enabled us to actually prove to Meme and show the value of the appliances once customers have actually taken the appliances what is their consumption over a period of months compared to how the consumption was before. So that consumption data is also critical for us to show value to our partners like Umeme and Equatorial Power, that we are actually driving profitability to these companies, which is critical. So there's both the pre and the post, and that has been critical for our business. There has been a lot of learnings, and there has been a lot of intentional building of relationships, and this has enabled us to have a quicker sharing of consumption data. I think one learning for anybody else who is to come into this kind of business is that there needs to be a differentiator. I mean, you cannot just provide a customer with an asset on an asset finance basis, and then you start collecting payments. I mean, anybody can do that. Any company can set that up. But what business are you creating? What kind of customer engagement are you creating? So any player who's to come in and offer a similar service has to really have the customer in mind and has to focus on the customer experience. If you provide a sewing machine to Stella in Chumo, would she recommend you as a company to somebody else to actually take the service, or would she not? What is your net promoter score? So we've been focusing a lot on how we can drive our net promoter score. How can we be more customer oriented? In the early stages, we were focusing a lot on getting assets in the field and trying to drive customer repayments. But now we have taken stock, and we're now focusing a lot more on training, on understanding the customer, and through that we're able to improve on our repayments, but more especially ensure that customers are able to recommend us to their counterparts and their peers. And that's really what Enegro's mission is, to ensure that we're the productive use partner, productive use electrical appliance partner that a customer would choose, and also that the customer would recommend us to one of their peers. That would show us that we're actually being successful as a business. So that's one learning that I'd want to share with the panelists. And it's one thing that's not very easy because on the one hand, you're asking for a customer to make payments and they're struggling financially with COVID-19 and all the different challenges with rising inflation, as you all know. So it's a constant battle for us, but that is the differentiator that we see with regards to customers having a long-term relationship with you and actually recommending you to somebody else.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to supplement that because I do think we have a few more minutes to speak about productive use. And I think over here, the learning or the takeaway is, as you've rightfully said, Edwin, the utility has learned and experienced the value of supporting a productive use company such as yourself by sharing data, and at the same time, you also sharing with the utility or showing them how you utilize the data to enhance that customer experience and really design a product that is based, on data, right? So there's been this learning, but it comes back to the question, whose responsibility is productive use? Is it only the private sector? Should the utility, get a little bit more involved? What is the government's plan to support productive use? Productive use is a big thing in Uganda. As I indicated, the country has significantly invested in its supply capacity, but demand is half than what the current installed capacity is. So whose responsibility is it? And I think that through this pilot, we've all come to learn it's everyone's responsibility. Edwin, I do want you to talk about the training because it comes back to this question of whose responsibility is it? Because again, we know that Enegro has taken on a lot as a business to educate the customer, to come up with a product that, caters to, small businesses. Small businesses don't easily access, credit. So your job has been compounded, but I think it's good for them to hear from you, what you guys are doing, and maybe call, for support, because it comes back to the question, is it only the private sector responsibility to educate the consumer, to come up with a solution, or can, partners such as NGOs help and ease, to educate the customer of the benefits of productive use?
Yeah, thank you, Sumaya. I think a lot of our focus on training has come about because of our early learnings and some of the early mistakes that we could have made. As a startup, we focused on having as many customers as possible who we can deploy assets to. We focused on selling the product to them, but we realized with time that a lot of the customers, as much as they needed the product, they needed more training and understanding of how to use that specific asset to actually grow their business. Not having an asset because they want it, but an asset because they need it and can actually grow their business. So because of that, we actually had a training consultant, and we have a training working committee as a business. And our full focus is now on training, because we realized that is the biggest gap. And that's also the biggest opportunity that we have to make a difference in some of these communities. We're dealing with customers who are very simple with regards to their understanding. A lot of them wouldn't know about gross profit or net profit or margins, but we try and make the training as simple as possible and related to the specific situation that the customer is in. How can this asset leave them with more money at the end of the month that can solve these different issues? So we're trying to tailor our training. We're moving away from classroom training. We don't use the 4 Ps of marketing. We focus on on the actual customer ourselves that we're actually dealing with. So that has been the big focus for us. With regards to who is responsible, yes, private sector is taking the lead, because we need to, we're a business that has to be run sustainably, but we're also engaging a lot with the public sector, with the utility partners like Meme, to let them know about the need to provide us support for training. We're actively seeking funding that will enable us to expand our training scope. And also we're engaging with the Ministry of ICT, also the Ministry of Energy, so that we can use some ICT funding to also drive training to these people. So training is a collaborative effort, but at the end of the day, the private sector needs to take the lead in working with the public sector and getting them around the need to collaborate. I think the public sector would only collaborate if they see value. And the onus is on us as private sector to clearly show that there's value in training, to clearly show that incomes are increasing, that there are more jobs being created. So that is the value that's what the onus that we have as private sector, to show the value, and then we can have a collaborative approach to actually having training across the board.
Thank you so much. So we are going to conclude the panel, but I have one last question for you all, and that is, what will it take to scale this approach? We've done this in one little pilot. One pilot is not enough, to really meet the targets of access and demand. So starting with you, Peter, what would it take to scale and replicate, this approach?
Thank you, Sumaya. The first activity, the first need for us is adequately picking up the lessons that have been already picked from this pilot or pilots like this, and close any gaps that we've identified so far. The second one is having a catalog of potential sites that can be extended to. And the other one is engaging more with the government stakeholders, including including the Ministry of Energy and ERA themselves, who are the regulators. The other aspect that we need to work on is finding what else we can add onto this program. We've talked about lessons and obstacles. I believe there are still a few obstacles to be overcome along this journey. For example, could we, for example, have picked some tools that could be found outside the partners and used them to close maybe some of the obstacles we've met? But I believe that the spirit of collaboration, creating more visibility on the sites that you can work with, taking advantage of the great business modeling, for example, that Power for All has been working on to show how this is done, and engaging more with the relevant government stakeholders would lead us on this beautiful journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. So Justin, same thing. What has East African Power learned, and what will it take, or what do we need to really replicate this approach?
Thank you, Sumaya. So it's kind of similar to what Peter said, but from our perspective, it's also in the spirit of collaboration. We believe that we would need to create unified and standardized platforms to scale up partnerships between all the stakeholders, including financiers, developers, EPC company, suppliers, logistic company as well, that also can be challenging, to make it like a global effort. What we are seeing these days when we're trying to scale up the Empower Pods is that there are a lot of isolated initiatives, but this doesn't allow us to generate economies of scale in order to reduce costs. So if you can have more initiatives like powerful in more countries that you know, that contribute to collaboration, this could really help the cause.
Thank you so much. And Charlene, from the mini grid developers' perspective, what is needed to scale this approach other than the money? We know that the money is always going to be key for mini grid developers, but other than the money, what is needed?
So other than money, I would agree and supplement what Peter has mentioned. So for us, it would be a grid plan. It's important that we have a grid plan and there is transparency across all stakeholders. That's right from the government, the utility, and the different stakeholders involved in allocation of territories. So this information is key for us to plan ahead and also plan for the integration, knowing the rights, who is responsible for which territory, who do we go to if we need this, we'll take over the site. So that kind of information is supportive in like implementing this plan. So if I've mentioned a thing apart from money, which is ultimate for the mini grid developer, but yes, that's it, a grid plan of transparency.
Thank you so much for mentioning that, and I'll come back to that in my closing remarks. Edwin, I'll hand over to you. What would it take to, you know, replicate this model, and most importantly, ramp up, you know, productive use of energy? So what is needed for scale?
Thank you, Sumaya. I think we've learned a lot from this pilot that will help us replicate scale in the next pilot. I think training would have to be a key focus. We'd have to focus intentionally on how we, as a productive use providers, are going to really train customers on financial literacy and focus on that. So that's from our perspective. With regards to engagement, I think engaging at a high level with different partners and also the ministry, I think we'd have to be more aggressive with regards to that and having visibility to have decision makers actually have more interest. That's both in the public sector and also with the MEMEs. So having more engagement at a senior level to have more decisions being able to be made would be really important, and that will help with public sector support. I think also focusing a lot on the community, on community radios. We found that those have been very powerful with regards to training the people in the communities, letting them understand, because people in such communities value community radios a bit more than some of the mainstream stations. Working closer with the local authorities to really have them buy in, where we're really focusing on having the local authorities buy in to the project would really help us scale. I think also testing different concepts would also help us scale. We can test different concepts in different sites. We can have a control site and a different site where we're testing a different concept. It could be with regards to the way in which we train or the way in which we are able to actually deploy assets, and this will help us scale. So those are some of the key pointers that come to mind with regards to how we can scale in the next phase.
Okay, I want to thank all of the panelists. We've been speaking for quite a while, and we are coming to the end, so just bear with us for a little bit longer. There are a few questions that has come through. I think we've tackled the one question that was, and maybe Peter, you want to expand on this because it is directed at you, which is Does this mean that Umeme is now looking to replicate this business model and scaling this? So Peter, I don't know if you want to take that question just to maybe clarify.
Sumaya, at this point in time, this pilot is still ongoing. I think the next phase for this pilot is going to be testing integration, and then testing the next phase, which would be replication under this pilot, under this project. So once the outcomes of the pilot are then clear, then strategic decisions will have to be made on what happens. But at this point, this project, I think, is still ongoing, and we still have a few phases to cross before we can evaluate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So the other question that came through was from Sanchez asking, were standard rural tariffs applied to the project? So the answer is, Sanchez, we had to provide the grid tariff because this project is within such a close proximity and we are going to, interconnect. So that means the customer is going to be connected. And that also, speaks to why we need to, understand the economics of this approach. And that is why we are looking at it from a research perspective. Are there any other questions from the participants? We are left with about 6 minutes before I do the closing remarks. Any other questions? So that means my panelist has done an amazing job. So I'm going to need help. I see that Cowell, if I'm getting your name correctly, has his hand up. Alessandra, you might have to support that person in unmuting themselves so that they can ask the question. Or Cowell, can you type the question for us?
I think I've been unmuted now. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You are welcome.
Oh, thank you very much, Sumaya. This is a fascinating project. I'm absolutely enthralled with the results that you've been having. And I hope that we can learn from it. I'm leading a project in Mozambique at the moment. We hope to learn from what you've already achieved. But my question regarding replication in Uganda, I didn't see mention in any of the presentations. I didn't see mention of any interaction with the Rural Electrification Agency, whose name might suggest that they have something to do with rural electrification, but I didn't see any mention of the REA. Could you please explain that?
Okay, so that is a great question. So definitely there's been a lot of engagement with the Rural Electrification Agency, who's now called the Rural Electrification Program. Again, this site, because it's outside of Umeme service territory, it falls under the mandate to give us a letter of support that helped us to acquire a license exemption that the mini grid needs in order for them to operate. We've even furthered the conversation to the extent where the site has to be connected within a certain period of time because they were planning to, connect this community. And this comes to Charlene's point around there has to be transparent communication on what the grid plan is. That is imperative for many grid developers. The project faced a number of constraints with understanding because we then got support or we got the go-ahead, go and develop the site. A few months later, there was confusion. We were told, no, the site is earmarked for grid extension. And that required us to engage extensively with the Rural Electrification Agency. However, there is the opportunity because for interconnection, we need, the MV line and we need to do the interconnection part that is very technical. And again, we are going to need the Rural Electrification Agency support. And then there's going to be the component of, handing over the network to the grid operator once we've interconnected. So I just want to emphasize that there has been a significant amount of engagement with the Rural Electrification Agency. I hope that answers your question. I do want to be respectful of time. We are left with 2 minutes and I do want to do some closing remarks. If there is further questions, you've got our contact details. Feel free to reach out to us, Council, and we look forward to furthering the conversation with you. At this point, I want to thank everyone for remaining with us. We still have a significant amount of participants. And at this stage, I also just want to take the opportunity and acknowledge our funders, who is the Rockefeller Foundation. Without the foundation's support and their encouragement, and also taking the lessons learned and continuing to support other innovative projects, this project and others would not, have seen the light of day. So we thank you for being our amazing partner. We have also partnered, as I've indicated, again, this project would not have been possible without the Rural Electrification Agency, the Electricity Regulatory Authority, and the Ministry of Energy in Uganda support. This project is innovative. When we engaged ERA for the first time about all of these different partners and the partnerships that we were having, ERA was super confused, but ERA was willing to listen and they were willing to understand what is it that we are trying to solve for and why is it important to have this collaboration. So I want to just emphasize our gratitude to the government of Uganda for being as gracious and being wonderful partners in supporting us and allowing for this pilot to proceed. And finally, we do not thank our university partners and our technical partners enough. They are wonderful in the sense that they have helped us to really think through the research questions. They have helped us to further analyze and really ensure that we come up with a best quality product, and that this is not, power for all being the referee and the player, and also just ensuring that there is, a wider and robust M&E process so that we can socialize and share the findings that we are finding within the project. So my sincere gratitude to the university partners, Makerere University that is based in Uganda, there's Duke University and Massachusetts Amherst out in the US, and then to Cross Boundary and the Rocky Mountain Institute for continuously playing, that evaluator's role in the business modeling work to ensure that there is rigor and that we can provide the best data and evidence as possible. At this stage, I want to thank everyone for your patience and for joining us today. At this point, we thank you and we can end the session. Thank you so much.